We're a 3PL that provides direct-to-consumer fulfillment for nationally known e-commerce brands. E-commerce, as you know, is a very popular distribution method, especially in today's climate. Companies are faced with the challenges of branding, selling, marketing, but there is so much more to running a successful e-commerce brand than just having popularity amongst your consumers. And what Burris Logistics does is we allow our e-commerce partners to focus on what they do best. And we like to say, let them outsource the rest. And that's where we come in. Our solution experts partner with e-commerce companies. And ultimately, we do a lot of the behind the scenes heavy lifting with procurement, sourcing, parcel shipping negotiations, and of course, maintaining the quality of the product in our warehousing. So once the order is placed, Burris is there to deliver a partner's product right to the doorstep of the customer. Today, we have assembled a panel from Mosaic Foods, Splendid Spoon, and 2 representatives from Burris Logistics to talk about the challenges that they have had to overcome on their way to e-commerce success. It's going to be my honor to introduce our guest today. So I might also throw this out there that we kind of are experiencing a little bit of bandwidth issues. So if I get this order a little bit off, we're going to continue. And hopefully you will get to meet all of our panelists. Just in case something goes wrong here, we will follow up with the information that all of our panelists are eager to share with you. So first introduction goes to Matt Davis. Matt, come online if you don't mind. Awesome. And do us a favor, tell us your name and your title with Mosaic Foods.
Hey, Bobby, thanks for having me. Quick mic check. Can you guys hear me all right?
Sound great.
Okay, cool. So my name is Matt Davis. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Mosaic Foods. We've been in business for a little over a year and a half now. So we're a pretty young company, and we just got started with Burris last spring. So, what we're trying to do and where we fit into the food landscape is we're trying to make it easy to eat well and put good food on every table. And our approach to that is by making amazing plant-based frozen foods accessible. So, we're out here cooking every day. I'm actually dialing in from the kitchen this afternoon, and we're cooking up things that you would cook at home the way that you would cook them at home with all natural ingredients, whole foods, and we use a plant-based cuisine that helps people feel a little bit better during their workday, energize their busy lives, and make good food possible in 5 minutes or less. So, I think it's a fun product. We're excited working with Burris, and I'm excited to join you guys today to tell you a little bit about our story and what we've been doing.
Awesome. Matt, thank you very much. We really do look forward to that as well. So next up, I would like to welcome Julian Karash. Come online, Julian. Awesome. Welcome. And give us a little about your role at Splendid Spoon.
Sure. I'll start it off with a quick mic check as well. Are we good, Bobby?
Sound great.
Perfect. So as Bobby mentioned, my name is Julian Korash. I run the operations team at Splendid Spoon. I've been with the brand since 2018, and I'm responsible for our D2C logistics, our food production, and our customer support functions. Coincidentally, my first week working with Splendid Spoon about 2.5 years ago was the week that we launched with Burris Newcastle in Delaware, and really the week that the Burris Splendid Spoon partnership began. So myself and Chris and Megan, who you'll meet in a minute, have been working together for a few years now. Like Mosaic, Splendid Spoon is a plant-based direct-to-consumer company, and our mission is really being a holistic wellness brand, rethinking the way people get and stay healthy through delicious, ready-to-eat plant-based meals. We've been operating since 2013 in some form or another, and today we are delivering nationally and fulfilling out of 4 3PL facilities around the country. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here, and hopefully we get some good conversation and questions going.
Awesome. We're excited to have you as well. Thank you. So Megan, your turn. Why don't you come online and tell the audience about your role with Burris Logistics business development team.
Thank you, Bobby. Well, I've been with Burris for just over 11 years, actually. And my most recent move has been to join our business development team with kind of the overarching goal of uniting all of our business units to provide our customers with a whole package of service offerings, as well as help our new customers navigate where they can find the best solution based on what their needs are. So I've been involved with the direct-to-consumer program since the early days. I helped onboard both Splendid Spoon and Mosaic Splendid Spoon was actually the first customer that I was directly involved with. And my role with regard to this segment of our business is to talk with potential customers, handle contract negotiations, oversee the onboarding process to make sure that all of our customers are talking with the right team members in our operation, as well as our IT group for the integration process.
Great. Thank you very much, Megan. And last but not least, Mr. Chris Robbins, come online.
Did I load up?
You're there. You made it. Awesome, Chris. Welcome aboard. Tell us who you are and the distribution center that you lead.
Yeah, thanks, Bobby, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Bobby stated, my name is Chris Robbins, and I'm the general manager for Burris Logistics in Newcastle, Delaware. We started this direct-to-consumer venture in Newcastle in the fall of 2017, and we really haven't looked back since. My goal within the organization is to work side by side with our partners to solve their operational opportunities while scaling to their needs. Our aim is to accomplish this by maintaining the superior quality of work and unrivaled customer service that our customers have come to deserve. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Again, thanks, everybody. We really hope that this session provides insight to the challenges and intricacies of running a successful e-commerce company. You know, we consider the Burris approach much like a partnership, right? So we're eager to discuss both the challenges and successes that we faced in these relationships. And we really hope that we have a great engagement at the end. And we really want to invite everybody to have a healthy Q&A at the end of this. So again, be thinking about your questions. We'll get to them if we can here. So, all right, let's dive into it. So now that you guys have all met the panelists, the very first one that we're gonna ask to tell their story is going to be Matt Davis here. And Matt, naturally, a lot of the challenges funnel up to you as a co-founder and a CEO. I think you can't avoid it, right? So you have to lead your business through them. We would love to learn more about your journey and experience as a CEO.
Sure. I think one of our first big challenges, and of course there are many in your early years, was finding the right partners to help us scale up what we were so excited about in terms of product and in terms of vision, but was actually pretty hard for the frozen food world to accomplish at the time. So, if you rewind a few years, my co-founder Sam and I are doing all of our cooking in our home kitchen, and things are going really well. We've got foods that we can cook, freeze, and reheat that are hitting what we think our price points will be, what we think our efficiencies need to be. We found a source for all of our specialty ingredients, and we go to take it up a step from there. And we say, well, we'll just get a small shared kitchen space in Brooklyn, and we'll cook a couple hundred meals at a time. So we go from cooking 10 to a couple hundred. And then when we went to make that next step, we actually hit a wall. I think we said, hey, this is great. We're cooking food that we're super excited about, that our customers in the early days are telling us is totally different from frozen aisle from their grocery store. But manufacturers are also looking at us saying, this is a little crazy, guys. There's a reason we don't do it this way. And I think that was one of our first big challenges, was having a little bit of a reality check with what was possible for the format, what was possible in the supply chain, and how we were going to go from a scale that I think was great for getting started, but not great for business. And we blocked a couple months that fall getting ready for our first, for our real launch. And it took a while. We got a lot of no's. We probably reached out to 40, 45 different manufacturers who were cooking frozen food at the time, who just looked at us and said, hey, we love your product. Tastes great. Can't make it. And whether it was the blocker was a roasting step, or it was a spice blend, or it was about hitting a certain, toothiness on a grain, thickness on a sauce, like the things that you would take for granted when you're in a restaurant environment, really hard at scale for frozen food manufacturers to achieve. And then what we started doing, we said, let's step back, because we know it's possible. We're doing it today. We just don't know how to scale it. And we took a different crack. And instead of talking to frozen food manufacturers, we started talking to people who are doing catering, people who are doing small batch manufacturing for local businesses. Started talking to folks who were thinking about prepared foods, not frozen foods, and then asking them, hey, can we freeze it afterwards? And we sort of flipped the whole model on its head and said, maybe we're talking to the wrong folks. Maybe there's not something wrong with the product, which was our initial instinct. And maybe instead we're looking in the wrong place. And we found some great partners that were willing to work with us, people who were, cooking for weddings, people who were cooking for local grocery store prepared sections. And we're so excited to get started the way we did, and couldn't be more proud of the product that we brought to market in the early days. So I tell that as a story because I think it's a good example where, if you reverse engineer the product for the supply chain, you wind up in one spot, and instead, if you find the right people to make in the supply chain to make your product possible, you wind up in another. And I think even today we hear time and again from our customers, like the food is the best part, which is, that's what it's all about. So, that's probably our early days example. And of course, everybody's going through things on the COVID side too, but we can maybe save that for later.
Perfect. Well, I mean, very inclusive, right? I think you probably answered some of the questions that I have for you. It sounds like one of them would be, don't give up and kind of stick to the values and the vision that you guys started with. But if you could provide a piece of advice to others looking to get into this space along the way, is there something that you can kind of rattle off?
I think that piece is real, which is, stay focused on the product and build the supply chain that makes the product possible as opposed to vice versa. I think incremental innovation will look the other way, which is like, hey, we're making this thing and we can make something a little different because we've already got the equipment, we've already got the supply, we've already got the relationships. But if you want to do something more revolutionary with your product, I think you start product first. The second piece of advice I have for people that are getting into it, which I think is a little bit, it's a little bit lost right now, is actually when you look at your supply chain and you look at the partners you pick, spend as much time thinking about the people as the deal, especially in the early days. It's really easy to get caught up in that 20-page contract and each and every term and every line. And especially once it gets to legal, you can find yourself doing spin cycles on things that at the end of the day really aren't that important. It's about mitigating downside risk or solving problems when things go wrong. Mm-hmm. But as you look to set up those initial relationships, really spend some time with the people you're getting into business with, because it's going to be a while and it's not that easy to break up. We're not swiping right on one another and moving on. We're going to be doing this together, and you really are doing it together. And so when things happen and things go off the rails, it's really important that you know who you're working with and how they think about problems. How are they going to approach solutions? Are they focused on big picture and growth, or are they focused on nickel and dime? And I think those sorts of questions and those sorts of relationship tests are really important to include in your initial negotiations and in setting up your supply chain. So that would be my one tip for people just getting started in all of this. Or looking to get into new business opportunities.
Nice. Well, perfect segue. Is there anything specific that you can remember that Burris helped you along the way of getting this to a successful point?
Yeah, totally. They're obviously, so we like the people we got into business with. We find ways. We're working with Chris, we're working with Megan, Dion, the team. Like, we're always working with the folks on the ground there to make things possible when things go off the rails. And I think that's definitely on the list. But outside of that, I would say, one big thing and reason that we've loved working with Burris in the early days is the scalability of it. Instead of scalability on a week-to-week basis being a primary concern and something that we're hung up on, we can actually kind of take it for granted, and that's important, right? Before all this and before Star Mosaic, I worked at Blue Apron. I was director of ops, and we did all of our own fulfillment, all of our own production. And as efficient as that is at scale, and can be at scale, and as nice as it is in terms of differentiation at scale, you find yourself spending a lot of time and energy as a team prepping for a 30% up week. January comes around, there's a lot of good trends, and all of a sudden everyone's trying to eat well, and people make New Year's resolutions. Folks are interested in exploring a plant-based diet. These things are changing in consumers' lives, and you find yourself with the 30% up week. If you're running everything yourself in-house, that's all you're doing for the next 2 weeks is getting ready for that. When you've got the right supply chain partners in place and folks who are used to swinging above your weight as a business because they got 10 different portfolio companies, or they have another client that's already doing 10 times your volume, you don't need to worry about that step. That's just a change in the order volume. I think that probably is the single biggest thing to call out, especially in the early days. And the other thing that I would say is, on the margin side, it's a lot of people think in-house, out-of-house. If you think about all the things that you're not worrying about from an overhead standpoint, that you don't need to go out and raise to get started, there's a lot of benefit in working with folks who already have the supply chain figured out. So I think that's more of an administrative on scalability is about focus and getting started and growing quickly. And that's huge for a new business.
Great. Thank you. That's some good insight. Back to the basics a little bit, when you're thinking about the different methods of distribution that are possible, why did Mosaic evolve into reaching customers directly? What was the reasoning behind that?
It's funny. We're trying to spark a renaissance for the category. We think, and the reason we use that language is because renaissance brings up like mental images of art and creativity and innovation. And, we think a frozen renaissance is what we're trying to achieve. We do that, we've really done it. And I think when you look at our product, you bring our stuff to work, 5 minutes in the microwave, you pull it out and you put your fork in it for the first time, you really realize like, this is not, your mom's frozen TV dinner, right? Like this is something that's a little different. And actually in a way is a lot different. And I think when we looked at that and said from a pricing with this we're trying to achieve, I think direct to consumer is better on a couple fronts. One, it's really hard to stand aside unless you have a killer packaging design. If you're as everybody else, and it almost becomes a packaging battle at that point, at least in the early days, not necessarily a fight we wanted to fight. You'd be next to people with price points, half your price points, people with feet on the shelves that you could never touch, relationships that they've had with Kroger for 40 years, all sorts of things that make it hard to be the new guy in the freezer aisle. When you're direct to consumer, you can control the narrative. You have your own billboard. You've got your own brand. And I think it's a little bit easier to change the hearts and minds. And I think someday we want to meet our customers where they are. We aren't a distribution company. We're a product company. We'll definitely be branching out into different verticals over time. You will find us as a more omnichannel business 5 years from now. But DTC first to me seemed really intuitive because that's the way to break out from the category and start, make a new first impression, not just for our product, but for frozen in general.
Great. Thanks, Matt. That's awesome. We're glad you did. Well, great. So next up is Julian. So Julian, we're gonna have you launch into your presentation here, and as the VP of Operations, you're going to be the one who's going to overcome a lot of the logistics challenges when you're working with a 3PL, right? Such as Burris. So why did you choose Burris Logistics over self-distribution?
Sure. Thanks, Bobby. I thought I'd start a little bit by kind of sharing some of the brand's operational history. And I think particularly after kind of Matt's 5 minutes there's really an interesting balance between where Splendid Spoon and Mosaic both are. And obviously we're both working with Burris right now, and we've kind of reached the same point, but Splendid Spoon has a slightly different story to tell. So having launched in 2013 as I would say one of the earlier D2C food companies, Splendid Spoon really has run the gamut on D2C operations. And I have to give the credit to a lot of the work that was done by our team before I joined, which I really think has really helped us get to the point where we're at today with our 3PL network, with Burris, and really with our confidence in our operations. Just to name a few of some of the different distribution experiences that go back in Splendid Spoon's history. Nicole started the business. She actually sold soups door to door on her bike in New York City. Renee, who's our current product director, managed a self-distribution operation and customer support operation from a warehouse in Brooklyn. We've had a few experiences with 3PLs who aren't quite value adds, and even worked with one who shut their doors overnight without any notice. So I would say that the last 2.5 years working with Burris has been a joy compared to the 7 years of Splendid Spoon's history. But I think Chris and Megan can attest to this. We've really hit our stride in the last year or so, and collectively we've all worked together to iron out a lot of the kinks and really up level our partnership and our operations and our capabilities together. And it's really an integral part. Our partnership with Burris is integral to the success that we're experiencing, particularly over the last 6 months when really the market has shifted quite a bit into the D2C favor. So, I think I'll touch base a little bit on some of the reasons why 3PL is the right route to go versus self-distribution. But, ultimately, I kind of think of operations and the challenges of operations and being operations professionals is, staying motivated to solve problems. There's going to be problems, around every corner, and it's working with people, and it's having the team who loves to stay motivated to solve those problems. And Burris has been, a great partner in the years that we've been working together. But that's like kind of a little bit of the story of Splendid Spoon operations. But to kind of answer your question specifically, I think about like 3 key points when I consider the value of a third-party logistics partnership. And actually, Matt touched on a few of them, so you might hear some of the same words. But the first one is focus. So, Burris and our 3PL network really allows us to focus on what we're good at, which is making and selling food. And we don't have to think about all the intricacies that are involved in distributing it. And I think that includes everything from warehousing operations to people management. I look back, or I often will look at reports and see, Splendid Spoons guys, hundreds of pallets of product, hundreds of pallets of packaging, of marketing collateral across 4 warehouses around the country. Yet we own no property, and we have no leases or no facility leases. Similarly, there's hundreds of hardworking individuals contributing towards Splendid Spoon's success every day. But internally, our human resources and payroll operations account for fewer than 20. So really just allowing us to focus on what we do well has allowed the business to grow and be successful. The second one is another point that Matt mentioned, and that's scale. So specifically economies of scale, and the economies of scale that our 3PL network gives us access to applies again to both people and purchasing. From our experience in a self-distributed model, we know that for a smaller brand like ours, if we were to self-distribute, we would have to cross-utilize a lot of the team members. Whereas, Burris can really maximize the efficiencies by dedicating employees to specific warehouse functions. So, whereas we may have a team of 6 or 8 in a facility that would be doing, every single warehouse job, Burris has a warehousing team and a receiving team and a picking team and even an icing team. So, there's definitely some efficiencies on the people side. And then the second part of kind of like economies of scale is on the purchasing power. So, using that purchasing power to negotiate rates on common goods and services, dry ice, insulation, customer shipping rates, and even freight. And I think those are all really big value adds, especially to a smaller brand that doesn't have that purchasing power. And then the final one is speed, or speed to growth. And our 3PL network really allows us, or has allowed us over the last couple of years, to basically like achieve things that would otherwise be unattainable. So when I started, Splendid Spoon had 2 fulfillment warehouses. And in a matter of weeks, we were able to expand into Burris's Oklahoma City location. And that effectively eliminated our need for express shipping and immediately returned a handful of points on our margin. Collectively, myself and one colleague spent 3 days in Oklahoma City when we were launching in April. And more recently, we expanded into the Burris Jacksonville facility completely remotely to get ahead of hurricane season. And those are things that, if you're trying to run a self-distribution model, that just isn't even close to happening. So it could take years to really expand into a new facility. So I like to kind of think of the 3PL network as a little bit of like a turbo booster for a smaller e-commerce business. It really gives us kind of all the different boosts that we need to keep us going. And I think when we look back on it, and when I talk to my colleagues about it, these factors and our partnership with Burris is really what makes us confident that we've made the right decision in the last couple of years to go to 3PL. And again, like Matt said, to really find partners who we like to work with, who we really believe in, and who we know believe in us. And I think that's really been a huge part of our success over the last couple of years.
That's awesome. And we kind of talked about some of those I think growing pains that any business goes through, right? And so we covered that. Obviously, we talked about losing your distribution or delivering things by bike. But you and I also had a conversation offline where we were talking about some of those things that you never thought that you would have to overcome, right? So some of those things are kind of outside of the norm. So can you tell us a little bit about what you experienced that you didn't think you would ever have to deal with?
Sure. I would say working in operations, I've kind of learned to never be surprised by a challenge. Things come out of left field all the time. But I'll share a story that is pretty recent and was definitely something that we weren't expecting. Back in January, Splendid Spoon moved to a new packaging setup that was using dry ice as our coolant. And after a few weeks of customer feedback and experiencing the product with the new packaging ourselves, we were so confident that the new packaging experience was the right path forward. And we were confident that we would never ship with gel packs ever again. We sold all of our gel packs back to our supplier for half of what we bought them for. That was back in January. And, call it 8 weeks later, the pandemic began. And, for anyone who's familiar with the national dry ice supply, much of it relies on a byproduct of oil refineries. These are all things that I've learned in the last 6 months or so. Consumers stopped driving, airliners stopped flying, and sure enough, oil refinery plants began to shut down. And really, to make a long story short, we ended up repurchasing effectively the same pallets of gel packs that we sold at half price for full price again, just to ensure that we could keep shipping boxes. And I think, am I surprised that happened? Not really. I would say that we had hours and many COVID contingency plan conversations in March and April, and never once did we mention dry ice. So, personally, I take that as a miss on my part, but kind of an interesting anecdote that's relevant to today.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Julian. What about future challenges? What are you doing to plan to stay ahead?
Yeah. Again, I think, operations or really, if you look at any growth stage business, you can find challenges everywhere, right? There's challenges on the marketing side of our business. There's challenges on the technology side. There's challenges on the financing side of the business. And surely there's challenges operationally. I think for me, one of the biggest kind of opportunities, I would call it, for us and everyone who's listening today as operations professionals, is really the challenge of expanding the diversity in operations and especially in management level roles. I look around at other industries, and it's clear to me that we have a lot of work to do in both the racial and gender diversity. Comparing ourselves to some other industries like technology and finance and marketing, so I really do believe that it's a must for us to expand that diversity if we want to continue to attract the best talent and ultimately solve challenging problems.
Great. Really, really good advice. Thank you, Julian. All right,
Appreciate
Megan.
it.
Yeah, thank you. Megan, so as an account manager here with Burris Logistics, you're there every step of the way with partners like Mosaic and Splendid Spoons. So what do you think are factors that help e-commerce companies reach success?
Sure. So there's a lot of factors that go into making the direct-to-consumer model really successful for a company to implement. And a couple of the key drivers that we've seen make an impact here are the application of a subscription model, as well as a decently priced basket size to the end user. So the number is going to vary greatly based on your cost of goods, obviously. But if your retail value isn't high enough, then it can be really challenging to absorb the cost of all the expenses that go into the process of getting it to the customer's door. So, that's from well-insulated packaging and the cost of dry ice or gel packs, if there's no dry ice available, as Julian mentioned, transportation to the fulfillment center from the point of manufacturing, the actual labor and storage costs of a 3PL like Burris, and then the parcel rate of the final mile carrier that's going to take the package, directly to your customer's doorstep. So these all add up really quickly, and it's extremely difficult to justify the costs for a lower price order. And then back to the point of being a subscription model. Obviously, if somebody's signing up for a subscription, it's a lot easier for them to just have it automatically reorder as the default if it's set to subscription versus them having to go back in and go place another order. So if you're defaulting that to that subscription model, you're going to see a much higher chance that somebody's going to be getting a reorder.
Awesome. Thank you. So that's one side of it, right? That's obviously on the e-commerce side and reaching success and obviously providing some advice. So that leads me to the next question, which, in our Burris Logistics view, what have we defined as a good partner with the e-commerce companies that we've been successful with?
Yeah, so I'll keep it really simple for this. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to good communication. So it's really the foundation of a good partnership and something we strive to have with all of our, customers that we bring on. We tell everybody at the start that we look for long-term relationships, right? We're not just looking for a transaction, for somebody to come in and use us for a few months and not be happy and leave. So a good partner is going to listen to everything you need and problem solve and, find a solution that's going to work for everyone. And likewise, we might have that ask of our customers as well. So if we need something as an operator to help things more efficient or to help balance out the labor that we have or something along those lines, we feel totally comfortable bringing that to our customers' attention to try and come to an agreement that works for everybody.
Great. All right. So imagine I'm starting my own e-commerce company here. What are some aspects of that direct-to-consumer fulfillment that I'm probably not thinking about as I'm embarking upon a sales and marketing venture?
Sure. So some of this has already been touched on kind of earlier today, but obviously, if you're a company and you're starting out with looking to go to market, you're likely focused on having a great product, how you're going to market that and brand it, and rightly so. But there's a lot of things that companies really need to nail down before you go to market. And again, sorry if this is repetitive, but something that you really need to focus on before you get there is finding the right packaging that's going to provide both a branding opportunity and a great user unboxing experience. While also being the right fit for your installation needs. That's going to be key. Having too much open space in a package can result in quicker dry ice sublimation. Having a package that's too tight is going to result in damaged product if it's all kind of crushed in there. We've also talked about different coolants, right? So whether gel packs or dry ice is a good option for your particular product, or whether you are able to use both as a contingency just in case one isn't available, since we've obviously seen that over the last 6 months. And then lastly, just having, a plan for your final mile parcel services. So whether you're going to be using a national carrier, more local or regional carriers, or a combination of both, how different transit zones and different services can affect that cost. That's something that you want to look at across the board, because you'd be surprised, looking at what you might find out just by looking at different coverage maps from different carriers and points of origin for that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we're going to transition over to Chris Robbins here. And Chris, we're really looking for, we throw out the term pick mod, a little bit, and hopefully people understand what we mean by that. But can you kind of tell us how Burris has evolved our pick mod and our picking system over time?
Yeah, sure thing, Bobby. So I'll walk you through what the evolution of our e-commerce selection process was like as we started this up back in October of 2017 through now. So we started by using a traditional case pick mindset, which was basically walking in a circle to pick individual customer packages onto a cart, just like you'd see at any typical grocery fulfillment warehouse. That quickly evolved into selecting multiple orders at once. And we did that using a system called parallel picking. This worked for about a year until the volume outgrew our operation. And then the final progression was to condense the pick path to cut down on team member travel time and increase the product density. So we attacked that thought process and incorporated some techniques to allow for better ergonomics for our team while adding some technology to reduce the risk of errors. And hence, you have the birth of the pick mod in Newcastle.
Awesome. Now, for people on the call, Chris heads up a building that we call a PRW, public refrigerated warehouse, and I think space is the name of the game there, right? Space and temperature control. But can you tell us how the overall landscape of your facility has changed since taking on e-commerce partners, and how does your facility continue to keep up with what seems like increased month over month demand?
Yeah, it's a fair point, Bobby. So obviously, space is at a premium, and as a whole, there just isn't enough cold storage available to handle the amount of inventory being produced, and that's throughout the United States. In a traditional PRW or 3PL setting, the amount of turns on your inventory is indicative of product throughput. Our goal when operating within this business model was to utilize every cubic foot available in our distribution center. In contrast, With the e-commerce model, we've sacrificed overhead storage space to accommodate high velocity pick locations. This has allowed us to generate similar product throughput, but in a smaller space. Just a quick note on that piece, the volume in the direct consumer space, many customers have reached their end of year projections this year by May, and that's all thanks to COVID. I mean, we saw a real sharp spike in the spring this year. So in an effort to keep up with the booming e-commerce growth, we've aggressively increased the presence of technology within our operation while trying to maintain a simple but effective approach. The real trick to keeping up, however, has been staying in constant communication with our customers and trying to navigate the trends and be as nimble and agile as business partners as we can. It really comes down to something that simple.
Great. Thank you. And what do you think, what's the Burris difference ultimately inside of your warehouse?
Yeah. So Julian touched on it earlier too, but I would conclude that, in our business, as much as we'd like to reduce the need for humans in the operation, we're still pretty far from that being an obtainable thought. In the meantime, we have to continue to drive our organization in a direction where it continues to be a place where people want to work, not a place where people can work. It's really quite amazing what people can do if they're all aligned and rowing in the same direction. I would say that the difference at Burris, and I'm hoping that our customers recognize it as well, is that we try to treat everybody as people trying to achieve a common goal.
That's great. That's really great advice for pretty much, I think, any business, right? So, all right. So, that wraps up our panels. I think I'm really excited now for the Q&A session. So really awesome job, everybody. I appreciate you sharing your personal and professional stories with us. All sounds like quite a journey. So let's take the rest of the time to go through some of the questions that our audience has provided, and I'll ask those questions. I'm going to try to help moderate this as best I can, but feel free, panelists, to raise your hand, virtually, or I'll see it and I'll send a question over to you. Contribute where you would like, as obviously we do value your perspective. And so a couple questions have come up through the chat that have been voted up to the top here. First one being, how do you find the balance between new growth and meeting demand? So Julian, I think that's probably a perfect question for our ops guy.
Sure. And I think Matt hit on this a little bit earlier, but it's really all about communication, and communication is kind of at the core of all operations at this point. And for me, where I sit, I'm always trying to get our growth team and our marketing team to communicate more, to communicate with larger lead times, to plan their promotional events further out, simply so that I can turn around and say, hey, Chris, this is coming up. And I think, it's no different than any other kind of supply business or CPG business. So really just making sure that we're always trying to improve our communication and make sure that everyone who needs to know is in the know.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Got another question here. This is a good one. So for Splendid Spoon and Mosaic, are there challenges to your supply chains that are pre-competitive in nature that could be addressed by the industry together? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm understanding pre-competitive in nature, right, I think some of those things are already happening. And one place that, I have seen over the last 6 to 12 months and really over the last 3 to 5 years, a lot of advancement is on the shipping side of things. And, since COVID began, the demand for shippers, for all of e-commerce has significantly increased. And I think it was something like the month of May, FedEx double or maybe 50% increased versus their Black Friday projections from the year before, which is usually a massive spike. And that's resulting in relatively poor on. And something that I've seen, and I see the industry kind of heading in that direction, is this reliance and an emergence of more regional carriers. And I think they have a competitive advantage in that they can really be experts of their demographic. They can be experts of their geography. And frankly, they have a lot less red tape than some of the larger national carriers. So they're able to basically be more efficient and work kind of at the pace that the e-commerce industry is rolling right now. And when I kind of think about regional carriers and where they might be in the future, as startup costs and warehouse automation becomes cheaper, I think it's really interesting to think about how we may even see carriers become even more localized than they are today. And my hope as a operations leader in a frozen food company is that they start to or some regional or localized carriers start to actually think about keeping the cold chain. At this point, we're really focused on coolant and insulation, but I think there's probably a likelihood that at least in major markets, you'll start to see some 100% cold chain from the Burris facility all the way to customers' doors, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Awesome. Great answer. And guys, I know I'm going to be a little bit cognizant of time right now. So any of the questions that did come through, again, we will send these off to our panelists and have those answered, and we'll provide those back to you. And so I think this is a good time to kind of ask a last question. And Julian, you kind of touched upon shipping as a potential disruption or even an opportunity in this model. So final question, I guess, for Megan and Chris is, what is one thing that you've seen that could potentially disrupt this direct-to-consumer model? And Megan, I'll let you go first on this one.
In terms of disrupting the model that we've got out there, I think what you're going to see is not necessarily disruption, but just, an incredible growth. I mean, this is something that we really didn't expect to see spike this much, even with COVID coming in. But it's just like never ending. So that's not really a disruption, but we just see no end in sight to the scope of this business.
Yeah, I guess it forces us as a provider to really define our solutions and be flexible. So, Chris, how about you from the warehousing side?
Yeah, no problem. And just to touch on Megan's point, we saw the e-commerce growth in China 3, 4, 5 times its volume when COVID struck. And since China's working a few months ahead of us as far as how we're handling it in the States and in the Western world, they've seen the volume come back from e-commerce only about 20% after that 400 or 500% growth. So we don't expect it to go anywhere either. The one thing I'll tell you, and working with Julian and Matt, it's been a pleasure. And Megan, having these conversations initially with the customer has made it really easy on us from an operation to understand what our customers need and what they want and how we can help them perform and get the case out the door that they'd like to. But the real opportunity for disruption is the inability to roll with the changes in e-commerce. The one thing we've learned in e-commerce and working in this industry is that the only constant is change. So with that being said, if you are inflexible or incapable of adapting, you're going to be weeded out pretty quick in this industry, in this business. And I'd like to think we've done a decent job with it so far, but every day is different. And it's one thing that keeps you coming into work every day, right? It's new, it's different every day. So glad I get to work with the folks I get to work with and get the flexibility I need to get the job done. And it's been a pleasure and looking forward to the next chapter.
It's great. And thank you, everybody. I know we're ending on time here. So give you the opportunity real quick to join Megan and I at our table if you do have any follow-up questions. And then, of course, we will be sending around a recap as well. So thank you again by way of Burris Logistics and the AFI Supply Chain Solution Summit.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, Bobby.
Session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, we're going to take 5 more minutes for a little break before our next session. Again, Megan and Bobby are around if you have more questions, and we will follow up. Because I know we didn't get to all of the questions, and there was a lot of good material there. So thanks again, you guys, and we'll see you all shortly.
Thank you.